Hi, I'm Gigi, and I'm a reenactor of color. My primary educational medium is living history. I've invited a few friends here today who are also reenactors or costumers or living historians, different labels, of color to discuss the hit Netflix show Bridgerton. Season 1 is set in 1813, which is firmly in the late Georgian, also known as Regency era. The show is period-ish, set in a fantasy 19th century reality where people of color have been integrated into noble society due to King George marrying a woman of color, Queen Charlotte, who is of African descent. The show is based on book 1 of the Bridgerton series of books by Julia Quinn. That series is set between 1813 and 1825 and is a collection of 8 novels, each featuring one of 8 children of the late Viscount Bridgerton and his widow, Viscountess Bridgerton. Their names are Daphne, Eloise, Francesca, Hyacinth, Anthony, Benedict, Colin, and Gregory. Book 1 and Season 1 followed the presentation of Daphne Bridgerton into society. If you haven't seen the show, be warned, there will be spoilers in this video. Bridgerton Season 1 opened on December 25th, 2020, and garnered a whopping 44 million streams between that day and January 1st. It is the 5th biggest Netflix original release ever. We've all heard that it was destined to fail because you can't have Black people in period drama. We have also heard what Bridgerton can maybe improve on. In this session, we will discuss what we love about Bridgerton. Who is we? Let's do some introductions. Today we have the Marquioness of None on Instagram.
Hi, my name is Nene Kalu. I'm a historical costumer and into just a lot of different sort of fashions and clothing, including vintage 1930s to 1940s.
And we also have from Instagram, Latoya Tooles.
Hey everyone, I'm Latoya. I like what I call historical play. So I do vintage and historical dancing, costume making, and clothing wearing when I'm not just wearing pajamas, which is now all the time.
Right. All right, let's get into it. My first question is, what was your first impression? Let's say in the first 30 minutes. Nene?
My first impression? It's a good question. I mean, I think the very first impression was the cinematography. So I used to do some film back in the day. And so I was really struck by just how lush everything looked. You know, like the very like high intense colors, like the flowers, like just everything looked very lush. It looked very Regency. I think they were definitely setting the tone with the cinematography. And then the second thing I noticed was definitely like very high impact, like kind of slaps you in the face with like the sex scenes and like really getting into that theme that this show is not going to be like your grandmother's period drama, right? It's not going to be like 1995 Pride and Prejudice or like, you know, something like that, which we all, you know and love. But it was setting the scene to be very, very different. And yeah, I really was impressed, I think.
My first impressions were, number one, this is real pretty. It was just it's so pretty. The colors are beautiful. The wide shots are gorgeous. Like, I just think I could watch it a million times and not get bored of the small details that they put into it and how very intentional they were about the colors and the style and things like that. So that's my first impression. Second was fucking Eloise Bridgerton. Yes.
I know, right?
Love her. Like right out the gate was like, oh, I like her. I love her. And then yeah, I think I would just say I call there's like that what I call the sex warning shot, right? Where they tell you in the first season there will be sex here. And I think maybe we can get into this more, but I think that that warning shot sets up what sex is going to be like in this show. In a very telling way, I thought. So I think I just was like, yep, not watching this with my mom.
You know, you're right. They did set it up from the beginning, and I should have taken that as more to come, but I took it as, okay, now that that's out the way. So I was shocked when the rest of it
that was a warning shot. They were like, it's coming. It's coming.
Latoya, you mentioned that you could watch it over and over. How many times have you watched it so far?
Okay, first of all, I'll take no judgments from anybody on the internet, but I have currently seen it 6 times all the way through. I mean, it's only 8 hours of television, so
It's only 8 hours.
it's only 8
8
hours.
hours well spent.
8 hours, 8 times 6 hours well spent. I have no regrets. To be fair, the first time I watched it, I was sewing, so I actually didn't see a lot of it. Because I was pretty intent on finishing a dress that I did not finish. And then the second time I definitely paid more attention to just like looking at it. And then it just became background. Yeah.
How about you, Nene? How many times have you watched it?
So I watched it maybe like 1.5, like once all the way through. And then I watched it more carefully, and I like kind of skipped through some scenes that like I didn't like particularly care for, and then moved toward the scenes that I really liked. So like 1.5, 1 3/4.
That's where I am. And I had it on while I was sewing my first Regency shift. So I feel like it's going to be my background video with audio, like just playing, because it is delightful to hear and remember the scenes that, you know, that were so just pleasing to me. Who is your favorite character and why?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I can. I think I do love Eloise Bridgerton. That first scene where she's like, Daphne! I just appreciate that. She just has no chill. And I also have no chill. So I identify a lot with her. Will Mondrich is my favorite character to look at. He's the boxer. Just lovely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful piece of dark chocolate. So I'm all about that. But honestly, if I could just be controversial, Daphne is my favorite character. She's just so like basic and Regency, and I love it. Like, she's simple. I want somebody to write some Daphne Bridgerton fan fiction all about her trying to run this duchy. That's it. That's what I want to read.
Is there fan fiction? I wonder if there probably is, right?
Yes, it's 2021. We have no lives.
That's amazing.
It's out there. I'm sure it's out there. And also like the books, right? Like the books.
Yeah, the books. And they've been around for a long time, so you're right.
So I'm sure there's fan fiction. Somebody in the comments point me to their favorite Bridgerton fan fiction.
Yeah. I didn't realize the books have been out that long, but they have been out for a very long time. So
I haven't read them. I haven't read any of the books. I didn't even know it was a book series until I was watching it, and I like spoilers. And so I started Googling when I started watching, because I was like, I need to know who Lady Whistledown is immediately. I don't want to wait. And then I realized it was books, and I was like, oh, great. So we do know who Lady Whistledown is. Okay.
I have a question about that later.
Okay. I won't spoil it right away.
Nene, who was your favorite character and why?
So yeah, actually, I was going to say that my favorite character too was Daphne. And I know, again, that's probably like a super basic answer, but I liked how they cast it, right? So the actress who plays Daphne, Phoebe somebody, she's like, I think Latoya, like you said, like kind of plain looking, but really like that typical English rose sort of deal.
Love an English rose.
It's very Regency. Like it fits like really well, and she's a fantastic actress. And I think too, I also really, really like the boxer's wife, and I don't know what her name is. Alice. Thank you.
Everybody's name. You watch it 6 times, you pick up.
Right. She's great because she just like speaks her mind, and she's very, I don't know, like a very good representation of, I think, like, you know, working class woman at that time who's like, you know, we have to get stuff done, so we're going to get stuff done, and I'm going to ask for what I want. It's great. Like, I think, and the two of those ladies kind of represent like, I guess, 2 different types, I guess, of ways to interact with the Regency world, and I just really liked that portrayal.
I also really like the black love that's Alice as well, right? That's the only real black love that we see in the show,
right?
So I just want to say, like, holding it down, and they were really holding it down. It's beautiful to watch and look at, so I'm all for them.
That's really cool.
So
that's a good insight.
What about you? Who's your favorite?
Yeah.
Ooh. Not Daphne. And I'll say, because so the first time through, I really didn't have an opinion. I really liked Eloise. But Daphne just seemed just too, like, you don't know anything. But I guess that's appropriate for the way she was raised and the time she was raised in. So maybe I shouldn't be so hard on her. But the second time going through, I just felt like, oh, you're such a hypocrite. Like, kind of when I was watching Game of Thrones, it was like between Sansa and Arya. I really was like, Sansa is ridiculous, but I love her. So I think in this situation too, out of those two, I love Eloise. I can't wait for her book.
At the end, Sansa is my favorite in Game of Thrones. Even
That's
though
true.
I love Arya all the way from start to finish. That's my girl. Like, love her. But at the end, Sansa is my favorite because of the growth that she had.
She had to go through some things.
I also just point out that, you know, Bridgerton is a romance novel. I bet women of the Regency era knew a little bit more about how babies were made than they make it known in this show. Maybe not, you know, all of it. I don't know how they talked about it, but I just refuse to believe that they didn't know anything. But this is for the sake of my after Christmas enjoyment. So
I really don't think they knew anything, because look at people now. Like for example, if you know of communities, like very religious communities or like other sort of communities where, you know, they don't really like to talk about that sort of thing until marriage. Like they like not all of them, actually a lot of them don't really teach you the details, right? I mean, you might get
sure.
some, like,
I don't think they know the details, but I think that a Regency woman probably knows that being alone with a man is what gets you pregnant. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think they know that. She didn't even know that. Like, she didn't even know that, right? So that, and then be like, you know, her mama got 8 kids, and she's number 4, so she was there for 4 more births. And you trying to tell me you ain't figure out no kind of way? Nothing.
Valid point.
Nothing. You know. And also, I just refuse to believe that her mom would so ill prepare her on her wedding night. Like that conversation, like that post wedding conversation where she was like, "Oh, you know,
rain falling on
but there's dog. No one tells the dogs how to do it, but there's puppies." Like, if you don't tell this woman, at least tell her to lay down and think of England. Like, you know, she didn't have no idea. Also, you know, she's a lady's maid. You trying to tell me Rose ain't never tell her what's what?
Yeah, that would have been a conversation. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, eventually Rose tell her what's what, but still, I just feel like, and maybe I'm just ignorant of the actual Regency era, but I just find it hard to believe that they would be so ill-equipped.
So I'm going to do some research, and I will put a link down below about Regency sex. We'll see what people who research this. Yeah.
There's a lot of research on it, apparently.
I'm sure there
even in academic like circles, like it's very popular, I guess.
I teach classes about Italian Renaissance, reproduction, sex, what people knew, what people talked about. So
what did they know then?
A lot, because of the way their houses were, right? And I kind of think of like, and maybe this is just from the Victorian like propaganda, but I kind of think of like English people having sex as like, it's very quiet. Like lay down and think of England, like don't make any noise, don't enjoy it. But in Italy, the way their houses were, like you knew what was going on as a child. You knew sex was part of life.
You had 1 bedroom, some of them. You also been like, you know, like you got 1 bedroom and you got 8 kids. It happened somehow.
Exactly.
I did also really like Lady Danbury a lot. And I think that actress is either Ghanaian or Nigerian. I think her name sounds Ghanaian, but whatever. Like I like that there was like that representation as well. And that she was just like super sassy and like, you know, because she's higher ranked, everyone had to respect her because of her title, right? So like you really don't see that at all in period dramas, like a woman of color in authority. Yes. and not as like a, you know, bad person or like, you know, super sexualized or something like that. So I really like that too.
And Nene, which plot was like your jam?
I mean, I really on it, like, again, I'm going to be super basic, but I really like the education of Daphne, and like just her finding out about real life was really compelling to me. Really compelling. I think too, I thought like Eloise is kind of trying to figure out who, you know, like trying to figure everything out and like trying to find herself was also pretty entertaining. So
how about you?
I don't know. Also just appreciate how sex positive and woman focused the decisions were about how they portrayed sex were. If I had to pick like favorite moments, maybe is that I really love the Bridgerton siblings together, like the little moments of like sibling camaraderie or like humor that happens throughout the show. I just really appreciate that. I think they did some great casting and some great I read somewhere that they had dinners together before they started shooting, and so I think it's pretty clear that they were able to develop some sort of chemistry as a family unit that I think shows on screen. And also just the writing is humorous in those moments. They're lighter, they're more loving, so I just appreciate that.
That's actually a really good point, because there was one scene, I mean, there were several scenes of the Bridgertons in their parlor, and one specifically when the Duke and the Duchess came by, and the Duke was like speaking to the younger Bridgertons and like talking about a pony and a horse and like, you know, that sort of like very familial scene. And I think it was Colin or someone who was like singing, and one of the sisters was playing on the piano. It was just like a very nice like home scene, and I can definitely see that happening. Mrs. Bridgerton was saying when they were all at dinner and like they all eat together, even the little kids eat with the adults, which was definitely not common and wouldn't have been for a family of that stature. So yeah, I agree with you, Latoya. I think it was good that they portrayed a loving family.
What about Eloise's plot where she's trying to find out who Lady Whistledown is?
That's gonna blow up in season 2.
Right?
I'm here for it.
He's gonna be so mad at Penelope.
He's gonna be so mad. I'm so here for it. And I'm just like, I'm wondering, I'm kind of like, what's gonna make her more mad? The fact that she feels stupid because she couldn't figure it out, or that her friend lied to her? Like, which one is gonna make her more mad? You know what I mean? If she, you know, I have thoughts about that I'm not gonna share. But yeah, so I'm just I don't know, like what I like about Eloise has almost nothing to do with her hunt for Lady Whistledown. And is more, what I like about her is her, I love that conversation she has with Daphne where she's like, it must be taxing to be so perfect or try to be so perfect. Or that conversation she had with Benedict where she's like, you know, if you want to draw, go draw. Like, I appreciate who she is to her siblings more than I appreciate who she's trying to find out who Lady Whistledown is. But I love Eloise. I feel like I'm not giving Eloise as much love as she deserves because she's great.
She is.
Yeah, her search for Lady Whistledown is less interesting to me than her search for herself in the world that she's living in.
So I can't wait for her book.
If they follow the book timeline, her book ain't coming for a while.
Okay.
So and that's fine because Eloise is a great person and have interesting life goals that are not love that we get to see her pursue.
I mean, I think her book would be really interesting. And again, I haven't read the books. So maybe I should go ahead and do that, but I'm sure her book is very interesting. And maybe, you know, they will do it out of order because I think Eloise and Penelope, right? They're like the modern sort of ish women of this series, or at least within like the main like families. And so I think a lot of modern audiences will be able to relate to them. And so maybe the showrunners will, you know, Shonda Rhimes and co will make the decision to like move her story up ahead just to relate more to modern audiences.
I hope that they do more focusing on Eloise. And I think they're gonna, if it's her season is next, if she comes out soon, then whatever that looks like for her, we're gonna get to experience it. But
right.
I think you make some valid points that I did enjoy getting to know her this season, right? And she wasn't involved in any romantic plots. I enjoyed just getting to know her. And I will do that for all the other seasons that come out. And if I read the books, I'll enjoy, you know, seeing her and reading about her in the books, even when it's not her book. I just feel like her romance story is going to be one that I'm going to like because I like her and I like the way she goes about everything else. So this is also, I think, going to be atypical.
I'll be reluctant. It'll be very reluctant. That's my guess.
And that's what I think, that's what will make very good just television and a good story, is because it's going to be so much conflict once she's out in society and like, you know, participating in the season. It's going to be a lot of conflict. And again, like, who knows what the conclusion is going to be, if she's going to find love, if she's going to continue on with her studies, like whatever it might be. I agree with both of you. It's going to be very interesting because it's going to be conflict laden. So I'm definitely looking forward.
Yeah. I will say, if I could just, I hope they do something better with her hair. her hair looked like a 1990s Black woman. Like, you know what I'm talking about, with the beehive and the I was like, you look like a Kirk Franklin concert. Doing. I was so mad.
Oh, you are right.
Oh, she looked like 90s prom.
I felt like they could do better with some of the wigs.
Just like applying the wigs, like
like who was doing this lace front lay down, because they're YouTube tutorials
doing these lace front lay downs. I was really mad about I was like, okay, so I will say the Queen's lace fronts, they're great.
Excellent.
Her lace fronts were A+. The the nap at the edges, I was like, oh, they gave her black edges. That just made me, I was so pleased. I hope that they release a tutorial on how they make edges like that on a wig, because I was like, I would do that.
It was very detailed.
What was your favorite wig? Best wig of the show?
Ooh, that's whole.
I mean, for me, it would have to be the Queen's, and maybe again, just because of what Latoya said. It was just good. Like, I love the Queen. Oh yeah, I should have said that before. The Queen is also one of my favorite characters. Like, every single time she's on the screen, and I'm like, I love that woman. So yeah, I loved her wigs a lot. I just like Jordan era anyways. So
okay, well, because she had so many different, which was your favorite of the Queens, and then other characters? Let's talk about two types of favorites.
Okay, I have two favorite wigs from the Queen. One of them is the braids, so it's the opera wig. It's the wig she's wearing to the opera. It's her dark hair, and they're in braids, and they're like woven into that like pomp or beat. I don't know. I'm just like, full disclosure, I'm not a Regency's costumer, and I'm a very novice 18th century costumer, so I know that her costumes are 18th century, but I don't know all the proper names. I can go bust out my American Duchess book real quick and be like, she has a 17.
I don't know the hair.
But I appreciate that wig because I oftentimes have braids, and I'm oftentimes sculpting my braids into historical adjacent styling. So I really appreciated that particular wig, just because I was like, oh, I can do that. And then the other one that I like is her light gray wig that she wears to the tea that Violet Bridgerton, the Dowager Viscountess Bridgerton, wears to the tea. And it's just like a light gray with the powder, some buckles, and just like almost, it's like nearly a hedgehog, but not quite. Okay. I like that one.
The Afro wig was it for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
Oh yeah, the hedgehog. Like, she had kind of like a hedgehog style.
She just had a straight up afro.
I was like, that.
Like, there's a picture of her on Instagram with an afro pick in it. I like Lady Cowper's wigs because she had those like fan braids pieces, and like she had like lots of really beautiful intricate braidings in her hair. So I did appreciate that. That's something that I will never attempt to recreate, if I'm totally honest with you. One of the things I love about Daphne Bridgerton is that her hair was accessible. Not at all 18th century in styling.
Yeah, what were those two?
Well, that was
early 19th century.
That was pretty Regency, if I remember correctly. Those like little bangs, but like the back of her head was rarely Regency in making, but definitely more accessible. And I'm really curious about the choice to make her the least ostentatious character in the show. Like, across the board, she probably had the least complex dresses. Her makeup was the simplest. Her hair was the simplest, maybe only rivaled by her mother.
I think it's
more complex.
Yeah, I think it's because, so when you're coming out, and people in the comments can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that when you're coming out in the season, like the greatest value is modesty. So you have to like portray yourself as like modest, kind of like meek, mild, obedient sort of woman. And so I think it would be in poor taste to be as gaudy, for example, as the Featheringtons, and I think that's why like the costume designer really like leaned into, you know, all the appliques and stuff and sparkles that they had on their costume. But for Daphne being like what, right, that diamond of the first water, she's supposed to be portraying like the Regency ideal, modesty, humility.
Interesting.
That's my take. And also someone like good taste meant being able to balance that and being very like just a little bit retreating, you know, not to say that you can't have your own personality, but you're not supposed to be like, you're not supposed to stand out, if that makes sense. So
I was gonna say, I think it's so funny how the goal is to be as like unremarkable as possible in some ways, but also to be the most unremarkable.
mm-hmm.
Like, look at, she can play the piano and her embroidery. Like, what man cares about embroidery?
None. But the ladies care about embroidery, and
but
the ladies
mother,
are the ones setting. The ladies, they're the ones setting the standard for like for good taste, essentially. And so a man wants someone, or like in this time, a man would want someone who has that good taste. And so if the women are saying, "Oh, is this, you know, this lady who can like play the piano and she sings and she draws and she dances really well," like, you know, all that stuff. So
I mean, if I could get deep for a second, I think it to me it's the very scaffolding in which white supremacy is upheld in, right? It's like women are what decide what is good taste then and now. And so I think again, I have a superpower, which is to make everything about race. It's true. My friends will tell you everyone everything. But if you really think about it, white supremacy is upheld by women. Women set the standard of what is acceptable in society, right? That's why majority of teachers are women. We teach our boys, right? We're responsible for teaching our boys how to behave for some reason. I just love that it's a patriarchal society, but the women are responsible for how it's indoctrinated. But I just think that it kind of shows you kind of where that comes from, of like a woman decided that being able to embroider and play the piano well is the markers of a good wife, and men want what everyone tells them is good.
Well, they also want someone who has like a big dowry, so someone who can bring
That's
in
true
money.
Also functional.
That's a very very important. But
true.
Yeah, being able to bear sons is the most important, probably. Money, and then being able to bear sons.
What is your favorite steamy scene?
That's hard. I'm gonna go ahead and just first of all be honest. I grew up very conservative and still very much. Watching people have sex on TV does literally nothing for me as far as like being titillating in its own right. So my favorite sort of steamy thing was when he's telling her about masturbation. When you are alone.
That was so awkward.
That was so, her face looked like he was telling her a horror story, which is exactly how I would feel in a similar conversation.
Her face, my face. I was like, he cannot tell her that.
But she just looked like, you're destroying my whole world. And I just love that scene. I love that scene. And I love, what I really love is all of the humor, like the really subtle humor of that entire like moment of like her starting the song and then ending the song and her mom being like, "You finished," and then her face was like, "Yes, I did." Anyway, I just really love that entire like string of scenes. I thought there was like some really subtle humor in there about word choice and placement and things like that. But I also think, related to my comment about the sex warning shot of the first episode and then the sex throughout, is that it's very, very much oriented in female pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
With the small exception sometimes of Anthony Bridgerton's story, but even then, they always have these very intimate, cuddling pillow talk moments that show how happy he is to be with that particular woman. And I think, like, thinking about the other sort of costumed dramas and the sex that they have, the two others that I like have watched in any part is Game of Thrones and Outlander, and those are dominated by the male gaze and the male perspective of sex. and Bridgerton is not. And Bridgerton makes that very clear. Every woman enjoys every bit of sex that she's had on that show. Yeah. There was no sex in that show that woman was not enjoying.
Agreed.
That's true.
So I really appreciated that it was very focused on women finding pleasure in themselves and with men. And I'm hoping that there's a queer lesbian couple in this show at some point in time. That would be great. What I like about that scene is she's talking about like, what is this intangible and tangible thing that I'm supposed to be looking for with another man? And he's like, you got to find that for yourself first. You have to know your own intangible pleasure is essentially what he's saying to her. And I just really appreciate that. He was wrong, and he was wrong for having that conversation, but he did. And he like walked away, and he didn't make it like, you know what I mean? Like he really cared for her in that moment. And he just was like, this is the truth in the most careful way that I can say it. And now I'm going to bring us back into the public before it goes any further. So I just really appreciated that. He was wrong, but he was also right.
Right. I mean, she prodded him though. I mean,
he seems like a stubborn individual.
And I think I like that you brought up queer, like the possibility of a queer couple, because I really thought that Benedict and his that dude, friend. The artist guy, his artist friend, like I thought that was
definitely thought what that was gonna happen.
Exactly. And it didn't happen. Maybe sometime later, or maybe there'll be like some sort of thing down the line, since he's like an artist, and like, you know, they always set people up who are artists or like otherwise to be, you know, outside of the norm of society. So maybe they'll set it up like that later. But in terms of like the scenes that I liked, I think I might differ from both of you. Like I'm not uncomfortable with those sort of scenes. I actually really like that they included it because it's part of, you know, real life. I mean, I really like the scene where, and I don't know how people are going to take this, but the scene where Daphne was kind of in control and she had found out of his deception. and then she took matters into her own hands. And the thing of the scene is maybe controversial because the first time I saw it, I was like, wait, is she assaulting him? Is she like raping him? Or it was a very complicated scene and very wrought with like tension, I think. But I thought it was really good that they showed it. Good because they showed his reaction and how like vulnerable he felt in that moment because she had basically like done something without his consent, which was not great.
Yeah,
so that scene is very complicated is a good word for it. I would say for me, that scene was fine up until the point where it became obvious that she had violated his consent.
Right.
That's what made it like, you know. That scene, my heart was really like, okay, so I used to be a high school teacher. And some things to note is that Daphne is 18 and Simon is 28. Just so that we understand, like, there's a 10-year age difference between these two people. I think about the young people that I taught and like the conversations that I've had about sex with them. And like, I always was like, everyone should be enjoying the sex that you're having, right? You like, if the sex does not feel emotionally and physically good to you and to your partner, then you need to stop and have a conversation. You need to change something. You need to do something differently than what you're doing. That's what I would tell my young people when they insisted on talking about sex at work. And I'd be like, you guys, I don't want to talk to you about this. And I think what was hard for me about that particular scene is like that Daphne, first of all, in the Regency era, which this is whatever, there is literally no concept of consent. Like, I think our modern sensibilities should be appropriately appalled by the idea of someone's consent being violated. The problem is that they never had a conversation, right? Consent starts with conversations. It starts with communication. And so like really the flaw of that scene started a really long time ago when he said, I cannot have children, or I cannot give you children, or whatever he said. That was part of it. And then the fact that they failed to have any conversations about like sex and what they wanted in sex, that is what sets this scene up, because she doesn't even know that you can talk about these things.
Daphne tried, right? Like, I think she really did try to understand him and understand like where he was coming from. Again, I am not excusing her behavior like whatsoever, But I do remember scenes where she was like, why won't you unfold yourself to me? Why won't you open up to me?
Yeah.
It took her having to write, like, you know, go through his father's old letters to discover what happened, and then talking to Lady Danbury. So I feel like she tried.
After.
I mean,
after
that's true,
she assaulted him, which, you know, how you gonna ask after if you're gonna get a good answer? But I think that you're right. I think also something to consider is that this is only a season, so this has only been a couple of months. It's like this relationship took place in the course of, like, if we're generous, there were 4 months of this show. And I think I have so many thoughts about this, but one, there is no, like, Daphne does not know how to have conversations about sex. Period. No one has ever had an open, honest conversation with her about sex. The only person who's talked to her about sex at that point, well, I guess we would say Rose, because she did it that evening, is Simon, and they were all very, like, coded language. And also, you should not be having conversations about sex for the first time in the sex having. I worked with high schoolers in Christian context, and I worked with high schoolers and college students outside of a Christian context. And my advice is always the same for both of the youth, which is decide beforehand what you want and are willing to do. If you want to have sex, decide you want to have sex before you're in the middle of having it. You know, like, you should never decide in the room what it is that your boundaries are. But, you know, sometimes you just have to, but stop and talk and think first. So to me, what was really lacking in that relationship was communication about sex, because they were very open about where our relationship is. We're not interested in romance, blah, blah, blah. But then, you know, there was a moment when Daphne was like, I'm about to woo the shit out of this Duke. And she didn't say anything to him, right? Right. When she was like, I'm about to find me a good match. She decided that Simon was that good match. And he was along for the ride. And so I guess I just feel like, to me, that scene is the natural conclusion of a relationship without communication, of Absolutely. A society without words for consent. That could not have happened any other way. They were not set up for it to happen any other way. I did also read a little bit about that scene beforehand, because, again, I like spoilers, and so I read up on it that there was a violation of consent. It is worse in the books. It is clearly assault in the books. In my opinion, it is much more clear in the books that she was in the wrong. In this case, I feel a little bit more compassion for this fictional character, because I don't think she was trying to get pregnant. I think she was trying to figure out what sex was supposed to be like. I think, you know what I mean? Like, I think she was like, I don't think we're doing this right. Is this how we're supposed to do it? Again, it was absolutely a violation of consent. It was supposed to be heartbreaking. That scene was not supposed to be washed over. We were supposed to see that there was a violation of trust on both of their parts. And we saw the result of that in the break in their relationship, where he basically was like, we can't, how will I ever trust you? Right? Like, so they did talk about that. It is a romance novel, so that was resolved very quickly. We all know that if something like that happened in 2020,
girl,
or 21, that's not how that relationship was ending.
And either way, you know, if you're in the middle of the act and the woman is like, no, I want you to stop, that's not what I want you to do, and it continues, or vice versa, whatever.
Or vice versa, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have lots of thoughts about that scene, and I don't necessarily know if I articulated myself quite as well as I wanted to, but
I like your point of view, and the fact that you had read about it before, so you kind of knew that it was coming.
I did.
And then you've watched it 8 times, so
6 times.
6 times. Forgive me. So I trust your opinion on this scene because you have analyzed it.
Can I say one thing, even though maybe I haven't done the deep analysis that Latoya has done, but I still know I appreciate it. But I don't want to come off as uninformed. But I did want to say that, like, okay, so Daphne, after that whole thing, you know, she went to her mom and she was like, Mom, like, you know, what the F? Like, why didn't you tell me what marriage was going
marital
to be like?
relations?
Yeah. So it's also like,
how can't say it.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the Regency, right? So, but the thing is, I kept thinking, yeah, I really, like, I mean, I think I became more upset at her mother, and thank you for reminding us of her title, Latoya, the Viscountess. Like, her mom, this is her mom's job, was to really prepare her first daughter, the first one to be out, like, for these sort of things and to answer these sort of questions. And if they're that close of a family, and she is Daphne being close to her mother, it should have been natural that her mom would, like, tell her something. But of course, like, it's not good for the story, it's not good for the conflict. So I get it. But yeah, in real life, maybe now, Latoya, I think I do actually see where you're coming from at the beginning. Like, her mom would have told her more than that. Yeah. So I've changed my mind.
I think it's just like it's just like a constant reminder that this is fiction, right? This is fiction, and this story is going the way that the writers wanted the story to go, both the author of the books and then also the showrunners. So I think always remembering that this was on purpose. In real life, yes, if there was a Daphne Bridgerton, she probably would have known a little bit more about sex. But this is a story that was designed the way that it was. So I think, but I also think that you're right, like thinking about like her mother should have done more to prepare her for marital relations. Her mom sure as hell prepared her for running a household, like, kind of like, obviously didn't expect it to be a duchy, right. But like, her mom was like, invite the vicar over for tea, redecorate this room this way, get to know your housemate, make sure that she knew all of that. She knew about how to run a house. But like, right. Your primary job is to lay there and have a son, and she didn't tell you none about A or B. Especially when you are like, okay, my daughter's about to marry a duke whose mother died in childbirth and whose father only managed to have one son. You better believe that me as Viscountess Bridgerton would have been like, so here's what we're gonna do. Right? So when you have sex, I want you, this is what it's going to be like. And then you about to tip your pelvis up and put them legs over your head and stay there. And this is how we're eating. And if we go like 2 years and it don't work, come see me and we'll figure out a different plan. Right? Like, because my daughter's not about to fail at this, and she's not about to die at this either. That's what I would have said. But
that is a good point, because there was institutional knowledge, right, handed down from mother to daughter about how to become pregnant with a boy, right?
Whether or not it was real.
It wasn't accurate, that's for sure. Tilt yourself up and lay on your left side if you want a boy, lay on your right side if you want to, like,
right, eat this lemon, jump up and
they tried. They were trying. So now that we've talked about this really heavy subject, let's lighten it up a little bit.
Okay, sorry.
The Featheringtons and their dresses. Talk to me about.
I want to get deep again.
Wait a minute.
We gonna hit it all. I got thoughts. So let's do the light stuff first, but then I'm gonna go ahead and use my superpower.
Okay. Have either of you read the synopsis or started reading book 2? Yes.
No. I haven't.
No, the synopsis. I read the synopsis.
Okay.
Synopsis is.
I heard what you meant. It's about Anthony, right?
Yes.
I don't even want to know about him. So who didn't you like? Who didn't you care for? Like, he really.
Anthony.
Yeah. We can clean jump over Anthony's story and go straight.
I like the Featherington sisters more than Anthony.
Oh, yes. Okay, Anthony is like the very definition of like a mediocre white man.
True.
Like, you know what I mean? His mom was like, I see that you have, what time is it?
His mom was giving it to him.
She called him out several times.
So many times. She was like, here is a list of 11 ladies. She's like, I know about your opera singer and your apartment.
She had no chill about, she let him get a little like uppity in his talk, but then she would put him in his place. I liked that about her.
I love that about, you know what, I have to say, maybe I'm gonna put her up there as one of my favorites. Violet Bridgerton. She had a handle on her kids.
She did.
It's true.
She did. She had a hand. I mean, like, she also didn't.
In one area.
She, you know, I guess I would say, like, she was a loving mother. Mm-hmm. She did love her kids. She wants the best for them. And she's one of those women who doesn't want the best for her kids in spite of what her kids want. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. She wanted her kids to have the best of what they want.
They wanted, right?
Except
like she wasn't,
she was
she didn't push Daphne to marry the prince instead of the duke, for instance. So.
Right? Anthony is the worst Bridgerton.
Yeah,
We all agree.
he's terrible.
Anthony,
Okay.
I think Anthony, you said Anthony, so we have spoken.
Yes.
You could skip book 2. You could go straight to book 3.
Go straight.
So I will say about Anthony's opera singer
Siena.
paramour, I actually I thought that character was, I mean, kind of one note. Obviously, I think she wasn't meant to be super complex, but I did like that by the end of the season, she had figured out, okay, this dude is like not for me. I need to move on. We're different classes, different worlds. It's not going to work. Like, I just really like that they came to that conclusion instead of just like Anthony being, you know, like powerful white guy during this time and just tossing her aside. Like, she had some the small amount of agency that she had, she took it. And she had people like the modiste, right, who were like on her side and like kind of helping her as well against Anthony. And I like that. Wow.
Yeah, she was like, I'm trying to be a mistress. That is it. I'm not trying to be a viscountess.
That's true.
Like, oh, I love that about her. She was like, the best that I can do with the life that I want and the station that I'm in is be a mistress. And the fact that she's trying to play these games to pretend like something else is possible, no. Which is why I also think that if I were in a Regency romance, I would be her. Like, it's not practical, buddy.
It's business.
I'm here to be a mistress. I wonder. So I watched a couple of episodes of Harlots, and they had like the mistress contract or whatever. I was like, is that a real thing? Yeah. Someone in the comments tell me if that was a real thing, if they had little mistress contracts, because I'm gonna get me one of those. Wait,
better. Can you explain what a mistress contract is?
I don't think that's not what it was called. But it was like courtesan contract or something like that. So basically, they was a hoe, they was a prostitute, and they would like become the like regular mistress of a guy, and he would like have her sign some sort of document saying that basically that's his second wife, you know, but like she doesn't get the name or anything, but he gives her an apartment and a life and all that stuff, and she's contracted as his. That feels like not a real thing.
It was a real verbal thing on the Italian peninsula in the 15th, 16th centuries for courtesans. If you were at the level of your game where you were sought after, you could become the side boo of one guy. If he was gonna pay you and then provide for you, there was a verbal agreement between either you and he, or your mother and he, or whoever was running your business for you.
Your pimp and he.
Well, not so much a pimp, but the one who takes the money, because you don't want to be involved in that. Right?
So you're
pimp. It's usually not a man.
Your momager.
Exactly. It's usually not a man. It's usually either the woman who trained you or a relative that does this for you. And so she would make the contract verbally. Okay, you're going to do this, this, and this. And she's not going to see anyone else, or she'll only see people in her free time if she wants to. And her time is yours. Like, you get to control her days. You get to set her schedule. And that would be
I'm not mad at that.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at it.
Me neither. Did you know that Queen Charlotte had African ancestry? Had you heard of that before this show?
Yes.
I will put a link down below to the PBS article on it. Nice. And you can do your own deep dives into that. I had read that article before when I was researching Blacks in Europe during the Renaissance, and her name came up, and I read the article. I was impressed that kernel of truth led to this whole alternate reality. I like that spin.
I will say, I read in a number of different places the phrase like Halle Berry jeans. Like, she's like Halle Berry. I think light skinned.
Yeah, is that what that means?
Or like
biracial?
I don't know. But I saw that in a number of places where they were like, Queen Charlotte was like Halle Berry. And I was like, the hell does that mean?
No, she wasn't.
Halle Berry like, she like Queen Charlotte. Like, this is... Anyway, I just want to point out, like, I just think that if anyone sees that reference, they should do some critical thinking about why that phrase was used. And we can move on from that. Strange. Again, superpower.
Yeah, so we're not here to unpack things for other people. If you are a non-person of color listening to this and you have questions, there are several resources, places you can go to get those questions answered. We're not here to unpack that in our conversation. We're just talking about...
And do not slide into my DMs.
If you honestly want some direction on where to go, though, I will put some links below.
Slide into Gigi's DMs.
No, don't message me.
Slide into the comment section, please.
Yes, the description box will have some resources in it for you.
Wait, I was going to say something about Queen Charlotte and her African ancestry. So it came through her Portuguese line. She definitely had African features, right? Because you go back to like her nose, like you go back to the extant documents, and like people would make fun of her because of these features, right? So I mean, they were obviously there, but in terms of like the color of her skin, or people saying that, relating her to Halle Berry, that seems really weird to me.
I think people remember Halle Berry as lighter than she is.
It's like why people lighten like Beyonce's skin, right? When she's not like, anyways, but that's a whole other
thing.
So I will say that on the occasion of her wedding to George III, there were literary allusions to her African appearance and her African heritage. There was poems written. There were poems written about her descent from a Vandal race from Numidia. And Numidia is the historical name for North Africa. So they knew what they got. She was fair enough.
And they were bad about it.
And she was royal enough, because she came from a royal house, that it didn't matter. But they remarked on it. And then when Queen Elizabeth II was crowned, she made a reference to her African heritage and her Asian heritage, because she was defending her position as the head of the Commonwealth, right? And the Commonwealth had colonized places in Asia and Africa. So she was saying, I'm like you. So she knew too. And it was known. It's known even now. And if they went by what we do in the US with the 1-drop rule, then yeah, you're not white.
Yeah, you're not white.
Sorry.
Nobody is white, but again, we won't go.
I know, right? We're almost. But so I digress. My next question is, did you see the reveal of Whistledown coming? Did you know? Did you look ahead? Wait, don't answer.
I did look ahead.
Did you know? Did you put them together?
I really didn't. It was a complete surprise to me.
Okay.
Maybe I'm just new.
I did not know. I didn't read ahead like right away on that. I did wait like a couple of episodes. But before they revealed it at the end of the show, I did know who Lady Whistledown was. I like to be spoiled. I like to know ahead of time because I like to prepare my heart for what I'm about to experience. So I always read ahead on literally everything. I'll be at the theater at a musical being like, wait. Like, I know what's happening in the second act during intermission every time. I always have to know things before they happen just because I just don't like surprises. So I did learn who Lady Whistledown was before, but I did not see it coming.
I was shook. I was like, no. I trusted you. I trusted you and Eloise hanging out for you not to have done this.
The Eloise. Oh, Eloise better come for her.
I felt bad for her. I was like, you have Eloise running around and you know she's running around.
Right? Look at her dead in the eye. Talk about you have grown things to deal with.
Well, first, best dress.
Best dress. Ooh, that's so hard. Number 1 is Queen Charlotte's opera dress, which is the red. It's a deep red 18th century gown. Love that. I just love that color. It's beautiful. I don't think she wears it twice, but for me, they look almost exactly the same as the dress that she wears when she meets the king, when he's lucid, like that dark red. I really, really enjoy that because it's like a break from the pastels that we see a lot. So that's up there. Daphne Bridgerton's dressing gown is like a striped silk with a painted floral motif on it. Girl, I was like, that is the most beautiful thing in this whole show. They were sleeping on this dressing gown. I love it. That's in the scene where she tells her mom that she's engaged, which I think is a hilarious scene. She's like, I'm engaged. I think it's the dress that Daphne wears. It's cream and it's got a lot of jewels on the top, and I think it's either the dress that she wears in the first ball or it's the one that she wears when the prince proposes. And we can talk about that bullshit proposal. You're not about to propose to me in the middle of a damn quadrille.
I All right, Nene.
Getting interrupted.
No, you pause it. You go pause. Pause for just a second. Nene, best dress.
Best dress. So I really liked Queen Charlotte's dress. It was a gold and beige cream. Like the whole scene was very like creamy beige. I can't remember exactly the scene, but I just remember the dress. I thought it was beautiful. I loved her hair. I love the set design. I love like everything. I love the dogs, like every single thing in that scene. and her dress matched everything, like the color palette of that scene. So I really like that. I like the scene where, and maybe this is just because the director of photography like wanted us to focus on the dress, but I really like the dress that Daphne wore when she was like, you know, going to show up and show out and like, you know, show the Duke that she can get the prince. Like that dress was beautiful. It was just absolutely, it was gorgeous. Like I really liked it. Yeah, I think those two are probably the ones that stood out to me. And then the third, some other people have said this, but I really appreciated that Eloise and some of the background actors during the day scenes wore like day wear for the Regency, so like longer sleeves. I really liked everything that Eloise wore. Yeah, like the neck ruffs, like all of that stuff. Like it was really well done and suited to her character, and just like definitely set the tone a bit more for the like, even though it was historical fantasy, I still really like that she wore those sort of clothes as well.
Agreed. All right, all bets are off. Let's talk about the Featheringtons.
Portia Featherington's 1950s vibe that she had going. Loved it. I don't care. Y'all can come for me in the comments all you want to. Nothing in this show is historically accurate, and those dresses were great. I also think her dresses were reminiscent of Bernadette Peters in the 1997 Cinderella with Brandy. They were very similar in that, like, that golden purple, the very high contrast brocades that she's wearing is very similar to the Bernadette Peters wardrobe. So go ahead and take a look at some of those dresses, and you can see there's like a very parallel between them. The red hair, the like insistent on marriage, she's got the Cinderella vibe going a little bit. I thought that there was a lot of parallels between those two characters, and that is my favorite Cinderella and my favorite costume show. That's what got me into costuming, actually, was that Cinderella. And it's also multi-ethnically casted, and the costumes are not accurate to any period. So that was the bar for me, and Bridgerton leapt right over it. So I feel fine about that. So yeah, I would just want to start with saying I love Portia Featherington's dresses. I know a lot of people talk about the fit of
Penelope's
dresses. I don't know enough about Regency to say that they don't look good. To be honest, I didn't feel offended by her dresses.
Definitely her fit wasn't right. You know, with it cutting. Actually, it's not just her though. It's like even with Daphne,
like,
everyone
Daphne did that boob cut thing.
Yeah, like
where it was like just sits right on top of the like.
It's cut too high. Everyone. I think to modernize, like we would see it and be like, you know, whatever, like it's fine. But like Regency, it was, and especially if you're like more like if you have like a bigger bust, you can definitely see more of the cut of the bust being up here, because then it's like at the wider part of your body, and it doesn't look that great. But not just with Penelope, it really was with a lot of the main actresses. So I guess that wasn't great. But even though that wasn't the best, I still thought that the actress who played Penelope, or just Penelope in general, looked really good. Like I really did like her in like the Chartreuse and yellows, even though it was kind of like a plot point that like, oh, she's in yellow again. I thought it looked good. Yeah, especially Chartreuse. So I've always wondered like what Chartreuse looks like on someone with fair skin, because it's such a weird color. Like no one wears Chartreuse anymore, right? But it's all over the place historically. And now I kind of understand why. Like if you have fair skin but darker hair, I think it can look quite flat. And Chartreuse, just like, it was her color. I
feel like Chartreuse is nobody's color. Personally, I feel it's no one's color. Nobody's gonna look good in that color. I honestly was like, I do not know enough about the Regency era to say that her dresses did not fit her well, because I thought she looked good. Like, I don't like the color choices, and I don't like her wig. I didn't like her wig. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't love it. It's probably my least favorite wig is hers. No, second least favorite. Eloise is my first least favorite wig.
Of the main characters, I agree.
It was pretty bad.
Eloise was the worst.
They could have done better by Eloise, and they could have done way better by Penelope.
Yes, those are my two that I was like, these are no. I'm a no on these.
The Featheringtons, their dress matched their, you know, their whole attitude. Like, it told a story, right? And I really appreciated that they, like, the costume designer, showrunners, they went all in on telling the story about the Featheringtons. Like, you didn't even have to, like, just from the one of the very first scenes, you could tell that this was like the nouveau riche sort of family, like, of the Regency era, and they weren't as like highly ranked as the Bridgertons or, like, you know, Lady Danbury, but they were still in that, you know, scene. It told a story, and it told you, like, kind of where they sat in this world relative to the Bridgertons and everyone else.
Right, I do think that they did that successfully. So the thing that I get really upset about with Penelope Featherington storyline is that, once again, being plus size is a flaw, right? Like, Lord Burbrook is plus-ish size for men. He's still pretty thin, but he's clearly not a strapping young man, and he's the only not strapping young man in the show, and he has character flaws. The only other kind of more plus sizier person is Penelope Featherington, and it's what causes her to be shy and retiring and anxious in nature, blah 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 blah. And that's super, super frustrating to me. And I was like, yes, there is a documented and written storyline about her being plus size and coming into her own as a plus size individual. That is a part of her book, spoiler alert. However, I think that storyline could be served and there still be other examples of plus size women, even in the background of the show. Like, literally everyone in the show was thin except for people who were purposely not thin. Agreed. That's trash. That's really, really frustrating.
Are you listening, Bridgerton casting people? Just...
You can slide into my DMs, Bridgerton casting.
We'll make an exception for you.
Yes, Shonda, you can.
Hollywood.
Shonda, you can slide into my DMs anytime.
I feel like they could go a lot of different directions, and maybe this is one direction they will successfully head into and not be as sizist as they were in this show. Do better.
Do better.
And
Do better.
Historically, we have evidence. We have extant garments of people who lived in the past, and they were not all real thin. Just like now, there were some that were thin and some that were not.
Even more, if you look at the portraiture of Regency era women, they're not thin. That wasn't the ideal of the time.
So I'll put some links below so you can look at some of that. And some of my favorite Regency portraits, because I am a plus size woman, are of plus size women back then, because that's the silhouette I'm going for.
People existed of all sizes, like, in history, and so it is really annoying when we don't see that, especially in a drama like this that's supposed to be more inclusive. I think, you know, there are people from, like, the Asian community commenting on how there was a lack of Asian representation, people from the plus size community commenting about the lack of plus size representation. So I am hoping that they do better. I am glad that they have, like, at least one, even though it was maybe not the best represented. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what they do with that representation specifically in the future.
Right. And I do think it's fair to say that Shondaland isn't trying to be a panacea of inclusivity, right? They're not marketing themselves as a company that's like the most inclusive entertainment company ever or whatever. That's not their goal. And so I think it's important for us to remember, as Black women in particular, that even though we're super excited to see Black people in these roles, that it's still important for us to maintain a critical kind of perspective and thought process about what we're engaging. I think responsible media viewership requires that a person think critically about their media diet, including watching Bridgerton 6 times. I think it would be really irresponsible of me to not have put any thought into this show that I'm putting into my mind, right? Like, that's, I don't know what 8 times 12 is, but that's a lot of hours of television. 8 times 6. Sorry, not 8 times 12.
48.
8 times 6. That's 48 hours of television where I've let Shondaland tell me what to think about myself and my experience of the world and my experience of this show. So yeah, anyway, critical thinking, guys. Do it.
I think that's all the questions that I have for you. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for joining us today. Nene, Latoya, I really appreciate you being here with me and discussing Bridgerton.
Thank you.
It was fun. It was fun. I had a good time.
All right. Take care. Be excellent to each other out there. We've been married 17 years, but
wow,
the first year, it was great.
Was it episode 6 great?